Welcome everyone. My name is Koren Ruiz, and I hope everybody that's listening today is doing well. Today we are here to talk about successful recommendations for Catholic stewardship and capital fundraising. I would like to thank OCP for the opportunity, for the space. And before we get started, for best viewing, I would like to advise to you that you close other programs or applications. This is going to improve the viewing and sound quality of the webinar. So at this time, if you have any other programs or applications open, just to be able to hear and see everything in the best way possible, please close any other programs or applications. If you have any questions, please use the questions section on your control panel to the right. And the questions that you may have during the presentation can be typed at any time. However, we will use the last 10 minutes of this presentation to answer some of the questions that we received throughout the webinar. Again, my name is Koren Ruiz. It is a pleasure and a blessing to be here today. I am originally from Mexico. I've lived half of my life here in the United States, and I've been doing ministry for the past 20 years, mostly with the Hispanic community. In addition to being an OCP composer, I am a stewardship consultant. Have my own consulting firm, have been working with Catholic communities throughout the country, helping them with capital fundraising needs. And again, it is a pleasure for me to be here, and let's get started. Today we'll be covering 5 different steps that have been proven over time to be very successful for different parishes, different dioceses, when doing a capital fundraising process. We'll be talking a little bit about, the first, which is learning and preparation. Every community that has capital needs, that has capital projects in mind, the first thing that they need to do is obviously learn about the different projects that should be a priority and prepare. A lot of parishes usually go through the ask for 2 different parishioners, and it's very important to learn about what your community needs to define your projects and to prepare appropriately for it. Then you move on to the second phase, which is basically training and developing all of the materials, the people, the volunteers that are going to be working with you. Also, we'll be doing some talking about information and inspiration process that allows you to keep your community aware about what you're trying to do. We'll be talking also about the commitment process. And finally, we'll be talking a little bit about follow-up and fulfillment of the commitments once you go through the process of capital fundraising. So that's kind of an overview that we'll be following today. But before we actually get into the different steps, I would like to talk a little bit about what stewardship is. If you go to the bottom of the slide that you have in front of you, you're going to see the definition that the bishops of the United States gives us in the pastoral letter. And that is that stewardship is the idea that God is the owner of all things, where the stewards are called to manage and to share those gifts according to God's will. The first time that I read this and the first time that I even heard this word, stewardship, I didn't even know what it meant. Being Catholic Hispanic, this word doesn't even translate into Spanish, but I knew that a lot of people related to money. And I think it's very important to look at this definition, look at this concept as a way of life, but most importantly, look at this definition as a beginning point, understanding that God is the owner of everything that we have, our time, our talent, our treasure, and that we as stewards are called to manage and share those gifts. In other words, God is trusting us with everything that we have with the divine expectation that we are going to do everything we can to manage and to share those gifts according to fulfill God's will in our lives. And that should be what we need to believe, what we profess in our faith, that understanding that God has a plan, has a mission for everyone. And I think that today that we're talking about the capital fundraising process, it's important that you see as stewardship the foundation of everything that we're doing. If you look at the top of these initial slide, you will see that more than amounts of time, amounts of how much of your talents or how much money you're giving to the church, stewardship is about understanding that it's a different way of life. It's discipleship, is accepting Jesus as the person that you want to follow for the rest of your life. You will see that it's not about money, although a lot of people, when they hear in your parish the word stewardship, they immediately think about money, and that's because it's been misused, it's been misunderstood over time. It is about mission. We are here today to work in our parishes to advance the mission of the church. And in order to get to that point, we need the time of many people, we need the talents of many people, we need the financial resources of many people. But at the end of time, we need to understand and clarify that this is about mission and not about money. Finally, I would like to share with you that implementing stewardship in your parish, it's a process that takes time, effort, and resources. A lot of people are not willing to take the time, take the effort, see maybe differences in the community, diversity in the community as barriers or things that keep you from implementing it effectively. But if you really want to implement stewardship, if you really want to have a successful capital fundraising process in your parish implemented, you need to know that it's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's even going to take a lot of resources. A lot of people think that maybe just because you're raising money, you're supposed to be cutting corners and you're supposed to be saving money, but you need to invest resources to be able to present this in the best way possible so that people will get well informed, but most importantly, inspired to be part of the mission in your parish. There were some questions that came before we began this webinar about stewardship with Hispanics, and in this particular slide, we went ahead and put an actual link to an interview that they did with me with the Diocese of Dodge City, Kansas, where I explain the things that you need to consider in a more detailed way about implementing stewardship with Hispanics. So you can check that out. But again, I wanted to start giving you a little bit of an explanation about what stewardship is, what stewardship is not, and then we can move forward to the plan for today. Let's talk about the first step or first phase of the capital fundraising process. The first thing that we actually need to do, is the learning and preparation phase. If you are actually doing a major capital project or a major capital campaign in your parish, and you are actually hiring a consulting firm, that consulting firm is going to run what is called a feasibility study. And that is basically to determine whether the projects that you selected resonate with people, that people relate to them, and it also measures the potential of giving that exists in your community. If you're not doing a major capital project and you're not working with a consulting firm, what you still need to do some preparation. You need to gather some input. You need to talk to people. You need to do interviews. You need to get together with your key leaders, the people that know the community, the people that are well respected, the people that love the community, and find out exactly what they think the priorities are for the capital projects in your community, what the needs are, what the strengths are, and then find out also if they relate, if they support, if they are in favor of the project that you're actually talking about. That's why the next step, after you gather input, you gather information, you do interviews, you do survey, you ask people around about what the best thing to do is to basically sit down and gather your key leaders in your community to make sure that you understand the situation in your parish in terms of capital fundraising before you actually move forward. And that leads you into defining your case. There's a lot of people, or almost everyone that works nowadays in stewardship and development in the church, that understands the value of defining a good and meaningful case statement. Your case statement is basically, you can look at it as a small write-up, very concrete, very meaningful, very clear about what your goals are for your parish or for your capital project. Defining your case statement is key, is the foundation of your campaign, of your capital project, of your fundraising activity. You need to define the projects, make sure that they are well explained, how much every single one of your components is gonna cost, and make sure that you anticipate all of the questions that people may have in terms of your capital projects before they even ask them. That the case statement also includes all of that. And then finally, in this learning and preparation phase, it's very important for you to develop a plan, a clear plan. And that includes not only knowing exactly what you want to do, but also making sure that you have a plan. And today, the next steps, the next phases that we're going to be covering talk specifically about a plan that you can follow in order to be better prepared and present everything in the best possible way in order to inform, inspire, and get your community to get on board with supporting this capital fundraising project. Before we move on to the next step, I would like to talk about 4 main objectives that should be followed in any capital fundraising process. A lot of people think that just because you need money or you need to raise funds for a specific project, the main objective is money. But when you invite people to actually come and be part of your team and help you present this in the best way possible, you need to get rid of the idea that you're actually enlisting them to help you raise money or help you ask for money. That's not necessarily what we mean when we say, let's put a team together. You're putting a team together to involve them or make them part of this process so that they have a sense of identity, sense of belonging to this particular project, and help you present this. And so when you have, or every time I come to talk to a leadership team at a parish, I tell them we have 4 main objectives. You're here today to help us achieve 4 main objectives. The first one is that you're going to be helping us make sure that we provide everything in the best way possible, in a way that everybody in the parish is aware that we are doing this capital campaign or this capital project. We will use different tools like brochures, prayer cards, Q&A, sheets, videos, announcements, different things, but in so many different ways, we are inviting people to help us provide the best information that we can so that people are aware, all questions are answered, and anybody that has any confusion about anything, there's people out there that will help you clear those confusions out. The next objective is participation. Many capital campaigns are done by a very small group of people, or capital projects, maybe the pastor, maybe people or some members of the staff, and it is always the idea of one person trying to convince or trying to get everyone on board about the project when making the ask. Instead of doing that, what we found very effectively is involving a good number of people in the process before you even present things to the rest of the community. Some people can help you with administrative things. Some people are really good and have talents with social media. So people are really good at speaking in front of other people. Some people are really good with prayer, working with children, working with youth. And that's the idea, that you form a team. You define the specific areas in which you need different help or assistance to present this, and then you enlist those people and give them an idea or give them an orientation about how they can help you. So participation is key. The third one is very, very important. Has to do with prayer. The idea is that through the first two, we're going to have a lot of people participating. We're going to have the best information available for the community, and then that we can simply, when we do the ask, we simply ask them to prayerfully consider what they can do for this capital project. We need to have prayer intercession happening throughout the whole process. And finally, a capital campaign or a capital fundraising process is one of the best channels or best excuses that you have to actually focus on teaching stewardship as a way of life. I've heard so many pastors say, because of a silly thing called a capital campaign, my community is renewed, my community understand how to be better stewards of their gifts, and it's a total different environment. So what about money? I know we want to raise money, but at the same time, if you inform well, if you get the participation of a lot of people, if you have prayer happening throughout the whole process, and most importantly, people understand how to be better stewards of their gifts as a way of life throughout this process, then you usually have a more successful, more fulfilling capital campaign or capital project. And guess what? The money actually follows after we achieve these 4 objectives. So keep those in mind. We already talked about learning and preparation, and that's very important, finding out, getting prepared, getting all the information that you need. But at the same time, we need to move after that to the training and development phase of the process. And I've already mentioned that it's important to involve the key leaders, but also we wanna include as many people as possible in this project, and that means enlisting and training a leadership team. When I come as a consultant to different parishes, I come and I tell Father, the more the merrier, the more people in the leadership team, the better. And so based on the different teams, we have a model that has 14 different leadership positions. I ask Father, we will explain these positions to people. We will ask them to prayerfully consider joining either one of these positions, and we will have specific instructions for each team so that they can help us. They can each help us in different ways to help us achieve those 4 objectives of informing, participating, praying, and learning about stewardship. So again, the first thing about training and developing your leadership team is making sure that you get a lot of people, but most importantly, that you have specific responsibilities that you're delegating to different people. You don't need to have 14 positions. You don't need to have 10. You can actually have 4 or 5 different committees, or 3 or 4 different areas that you think are necessary, like maybe the communications portion, like maybe the people that will along with Father help you be the face and the voice of the campaign, having people that take care of the spiritual part, working with children, working with youth, working or promoting prayer, and at the same time maybe even have some other teams that will allow you to complete everything that you need to do for the capital fundraising process once you present it to the community. Another important piece is being able to develop communication materials. As I mentioned within the 4 objectives, the first one that I mentioned was information. And we are trying to make sure that people understand what we're trying to do, that people know that the campaign is actually happening. And I've seen so many times in many parishes that there's different projects happening in the parish, and only about 20% or 25% of the parish actually knows about it. And in this case, we're trying to make sure that everyone is aware that the campaign is happening, everybody's informed what the components are, what the projects are, and everybody knows exactly how they can be a part of this important project for the parish. And that includes developing some good and effective communication materials. I will be showing you some samples of some printed materials that we've done, and mention a little bit about the things that we typically do to improve the communications part of the campaign. But we typically do a brochure, parish brochure, that includes the case, that includes the projects, that includes ways of giving, that includes personal invitation by leaders and the pastor to join this important project. We have a prayer card, we have Q&A sheets. You obviously need a commitment card, you obviously need thank you cards, you obviously need nowadays a video, and we will be talking a little bit more about those and seeing some examples of the tools that you can use for communication materials. Another part before we move into those samples is doing what we call a major donor prospect review, or a major donor process that is basically consists of listing and reviewing your potential major donors in your parish. Listing, that's pretty self-explanatory. You're just basically making a list of everyone that you think will qualify as a major donor. That means that can, in some cases, include people that have been given in significant amounts to your parish in the past, or simply people that actually have a history of giving in your parish because of the strong relationship that they have, or because of the love that they have for the parish. The reviewing part is very important. You need to consider a couple of things that are very important to review and filter that list, so that you focus all of your efforts in the right people or the right donors. The two elements that you actually need to consider is, first, capacity or giving capacity. That means whether the person has the ability to give in a more significant way than the average parishioner. And then the second element is interest in the project, or a strong relationship or love for the parish. If a donor or your prospects in that list score very high on giving capacity and on interest for the project and love for the parish, then those are the people that move on to the next phase, and those are the major donors for the campaign that you are going to be approaching. But it's important that before you even get to the public phase of the campaign, you enlist a team, you train them, you develop communication materials that will be given out, and you do a major donor review so that you know exactly which those people are going to be, so that you can focus your effort and your time in the best and most appropriate way. As I mentioned, we are sharing today with you a few examples, or a few samples of some of the printed materials that we use. This is a sample of a 4-page brochure that we are using currently with a parish in Santa Ana, California. We are doing a $1 million campaign at this time for Our Lady, Immaculate Heart of Mary in Santa Ana, California. And I just got the good news yesterday. We got to 1,050,000, so they are over their goal. They are renovating their parish hall. As you can see in the first picture, there's a collage of pictures that represents the diversity. It's very important that the first thing that they see in the brochure, that they are first attractive. Hopefully you can do color, you can do something of good quality. It shows the diversity or something that represents your parish. In the second page, you see a message from the pastor that explains the projects, but at the same time, it gives the personal invitation from the pastor. And then page 3 lists the projects one more time, just in case people missed it from the letter from the pastor. It lists the projects again. They need to be visible. They need to be a specific section in them that explains the projects. And then also we talk a little bit about ways of giving, or maybe a reflection about what people can consider to actually give, that it needs to be planned, that it needs to be proportionate, that our gift needs to be prayerful, and it needs to be sacrificial. And you can see right there a table. There are a number of tables or a number of different resources that you can use to give people an idea about how they can give. In many ways, I always say, if you're dealing with a community that gives, small gifts or something, you can always say, it's just $1 a day, $1 a day for the next 3 years if it's a 3-year capital campaign. When you come up to someone and say, can you give $1,000? Maybe that person is going to say, well, I don't know, maybe let me think about it. Let me talk to my wife. Let me check what I can do. But if you ask them, can you prayerfully consider giving $1 a day? That sounds so different, so much easier. And the thing is that for this campaign specifically, $1 a day over 3 years is $1,080. So that basically explaining to people ways of giving in a practical and a good way, especially to the community, really, really makes a difference. And the last thing I want to point out in this brochure is that there's a message. There's a message from the leadership team. You'll see the English speaking team, the Vietnamese speaking team, and there was maybe about 300 people in the Spanish-speaking leadership team for this parish. So you can see that in this parish they have the 3 languages, but the reality is that it's mostly Hispanic. Prayer card is very, very important, especially for a capital campaign. You need to design a prayer, a stewardship prayer specifically for the capital campaign. This is for Our Lady of Guadalupe, Delja in Santa Ana, California. You can see the picture of the church. You can use any image you want. You put the name of the campaign in the front, and then in the back you put stewardship prayer, and then you put the stewardship prayer that was created either by the pastor or by the prayer group that's helping you in the campaign. There's, in this case, there's a sample of an invitation. And then there's also text for a thank you card. Those are very, very important. And then this brings me to the video. Of course, we don't have the time to show you a sample video, but nowadays, videos have been extremely effective if they are done well, if they are done professionally. I strongly encourage you to invest in a good quality video that will explain your case, will show how wonderful your community is, and will inspire people to give to the campaign. In many cases, we give out the brochure, we give out the prayer card, we give out the Q&A, we do so many different announcements, but it's not until people actually see the video that all those people that have been not paying attention over the past 3 weeks with the video, they for sure know that the campaign is happening, that the projects are important for the parish, and they get inspired to be a part of this. So invest in your video. So right now, we'll be talking about the third step, which is information and inspiration. And I want to emphasize that everything that I've mentioned so far is basically preparation preparation activities that, or different things that you're doing before you even talk to your community about your campaign. A lot of people jump into giving or asking for money right away without a plan, without tools, without a team, without all the things that we mentioned before. And the idea here is that, the first two steps are so crucial in your process that you really need to take the time to prepare before you inform and inspire the community. So once you're ready, you have everything, your printed materials, you have your video ready, you have your major donor list, you have your case statement well defined, and you have people on board helping you and backing you up with everything that you're doing. Then you move over to the public phase of the campaign. And that means that on 1 or 2 weekends, you take the time to announce that you're officially beginning your capital campaign, or you're beginning the officially the fundraising for a specific capital project. So you take the time to give out maybe your brochure on the first weekend, and you announce that you're officially starting your capital campaign. After you spend 1 or 2 weekends informing, then you take some time to try to inspire people. And that's where using the prayer card, that's where praying activities, that's where activities with children, activities with youth, homilies that talk about stewardship, late witness testimonies are very, very effective to talk about the love for the community and the vision that people need to join in order to advance the mission of the church. Another component that happens throughout the information and inspiration phase is that you want to approach your major donors and your key leaders in the community to ask them for their commitments prior to the community's commitment weekend. This allows you to give them specialized attention. This allows you to do some more explanation at different events, because when you actually do something at Mass, a 5-minute announcement or a 7-minute explanation or inspirational talk, it's already too long. So you do little events or major donor dinners or major donor visits where you have the time to explain to these people that set the pace in your parish the importance about this project, and to ask them for their commitment prior to commitment weekend with the community. The fourth step is very, very important, and this is basically what it all comes down to: the ask. A lot of people get nervous. I've seen so many priests and so many pastors that struggle making the ask to parishioners, and that is because you don't actually, when you come up to a priest and you ask him, did you become a priest to learn how to ask for money effectively? And 99% of them are going to tell you, no, I didn't become a priest to be able to know how to do that. But nowadays it's so important that either leaders and pastors know how to do the ask effectively. The time and the way that the ask is made makes the world of a difference in the support that people are going to be given to your capital project and to your parish. And so when you do that, there's different styles. I usually use a lot of personal stories and try to be as motivational as possible. And everybody has their own style, but it's very important that rather than talking to paying the bills or to making sure that we need to give because the roof is ruined, or because the parking lot it's needs to be fixed or something, we need to talk about mission. We need to talk about the need to evangelize. We need to talk about the need to educate people, educate parishioners, and advance the mission of the church. Everybody wants to be part of something great, and everybody wants to be part of the mission if the mission sounds engaging and motivational enough. So do not talk about, okay, we're asking you for money to fix a parking lot, or we're asking you for money to build this, and because we need it. But rather than that, talk about mission, talk about the vision for the future and the need to evangelize. and people will actually be a lot more open to do that. Also, in the ask, it's very important that you focus on stewardship, that you emphasize that our gift needs to be planned, needs to be proportionate to the way that God has blessed us, that it needs to be prayerful, it needs to be sacrificial. And we could actually do another webinar just to talk about that, but I think that it's very important that for people to understand that it is very different when you just simply ask and they just do out of impulse or any impulsive decision. It's very important. It makes the world of a difference if they take the time to plan. It takes the time to reflect on how God has blessed them and decide on a proportionate gift for this campaign. It's important that you invite them to pray so that they can discover what God wants to do in their lives through this capital project. And it is important that they actually consider a sacrificial gift to this campaign out of the love that they have for their community and for the Lord. Let's move on to the follow-up process before we actually look at follow-up and in the fulfillment phase of the campaign. I want to talk a little bit about this initial follow-up planning sheet that I put together. It's something very, very simple, but it can allow you to brainstorm some ideas, some good ideas about what you can do to follow up. Please keep this in mind, and I cannot stress this enough. It is just as important to follow up over the next years, or depending how long your capital project is. If it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes it's 5 years. It's important to give proper follow up to the process. Is just as important as everything that we talked about. If I want to give a level of importance to everything, I will say 50% of the importance is everything that we just talked about up until you do the ask and you collect your commitments, and the other 50% is just as important is to do effective follow-up. So as you can see in the first column is the activities. Second column, you list possible follow-up activities. Like, let's say I'm listing some examples. Financial report. Do you think it's important to keep people in the loop about the financial report or the financials, how much money is coming in, how it's being used, where are we in the project? Of course, it is very, very important. And so if you list it as one of your possible follow-up activities, then the next column will allow you to put how frequently you want to do that. So let's say for a financial report, you can do it every 2 months or every 3 months or every 4 months, depending on what you think is appropriate for your community. And then in the next column, you have a space to list the name of the person that might be the right person to be in charge of doing the financial reports. Thanking families, either in the bulletin, sending a thank you card, however you want to do it, but making sure that people feel appreciated, feel recognized for their effort to support your capital project. And then you decide on the frequency, you decide on who's going to be helping you with that specific activity. And as you can see, you see other examples, but this is basically a sheet that you can use, blank list of the follow-up activities that you think are appropriate for your community. List the frequency that you think is most appropriate, and also assign it to a specific person. In terms of the fulfillment part of these process, I just talked about the follow-up initial sheet or the planning sheet that basically allows you to create or be better prepared for your follow-up calendar. And I want to make a parenthesis here really quick. If you have any questions about anything we've discussed or anything that we've talked about right now, there's something that you would like us to talk into more detail, do not forget that you have a question section where you can type in your questions. You can send them in. There's a person that's actually looking at all those questions, and when it's question and answers time, we will take some time to answer those questions. But do not wait until the end to send your questions, so that we can be better prepared, and it's going to be more likely that we are going to address your question if you send it right now. So as I was mentioning right now, the sheet that was in the previous slide is just a preparation to create your follow-up calendar. As I mentioned, follow-up is extremely important to be done properly, and a lot of parishes, a lot of people, when they have success, they have a lot of pledges. They think they were already successful. They don't think, or they don't see a need to do any follow-up, any fulfillment process, and it is just as important. I cannot stress that enough. And so let's talk a little bit about the follow-up calendar. And the three things that I just mentioned right now is listing follow-up activities, determining the frequency in which they can be more appropriate for your community, and also delegate responsibilities. People that helped you throughout the process to be a part of your capital fundraising campaign, helping you with different activities, can still help you throughout the follow-up process if you delegate them some responsibilities. It is important that for this follow-up calendar, and this is very important to keep in mind, this doesn't mean that you're going to be talking about this every week, or that you're going to be giving a lot of work to a lot of people. The follow-up process doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to become a burden on people. You can do maybe 2, 3 at the most small activities for follow-up every month, and you should be okay. In that sheet that I just mentioned in the previous slide, you will see that there's for you to actually list the follow-up activities. It is important that you are selective with those follow-up activities, that you once you make that list, you filter that list into activities that you think are going to be making more impact. And at the same time, it's very, very important that once you are actually selective with those activities, you do not create a follow-up calendar that is too long. If your capital campaign is 3 years or 5 years, do a follow-up calendar for the first year, and for the second year or the third year, you're going to be taking out things that were not as effective, and you're adding new ideas to that follow-up calendar. But make sure that it's not a set-in-stone follow-up calendar for 3 years, and that it's not too busy that you cannot actually do all the activities that you think will be effective for this. And the final thing is monitor that calendar, add it if possible to the parish calendar, so that it's on it's available to a lot of people, and nothing falls through the cracks. And make sure that you promote it, you enforce it, and you continue to keep people informed. But most importantly, you keep people appreciated and motivated and inspired about what we're doing through this campaign. Now, taking advantage that we are here at OCP, and again, I want to thank OCP for the space and the opportunity to be here. I found myself many times struggling to meet just the capital needs of our choir. As a choir director, I've seen that there's a need for different resources, liturgical or hymnals, different music and everything, and taking advantage of the fact that we're here. I would like to turn it over to Gail so that she can talk to us a little bit about how OCP can help us if you have in your parish any liturgical needs for some resources or capital projects that refer to liturgy.
Hi, hello, how you doing? I am the sales manager at OCP, and even though we might not be able to remodel your church or build you a church, we can help you with other worship expenses through our parish grants program, which gives direct financial assistance for liturgy and musical needs. Grants are awarded annually, and the number and the amounts vary from year to year. It was established as a means of providing Catholic churches with financial support for religious, education, and charitable purposes. Last year, we gave $200,000 to around 79 parishes all around the nation. And next year, that grant could be yours. And all you need to do to get started is to apply at ocp.org/grants, and you need to do it by May 30th. So if I were you, as soon as this webinar is over, I would go there and check out that web page. The other thing that we can offer at OCP is a fundraising kit. We put a fundraising kit together for you to be able to fundraise for missals or missal covers or hymnals. And in this fundraising kit, we have flyer and banner templates. We have samples for the parishioners to be able to review. We'll be able to give you suggestions and ideas that other parishes have done that have been successful. And we'll also give you 100 commemorative gift book plates that you can use to help with your fundraising. And I'd like to tell you just a little bit more about the commemorative gift program. It really gives your parishioners the opportunity to sponsor these new missals or covers in a way that is really meaningful to them and to the church. They can donate a sum of money in the honor of a loved one or an event, and both the donor's names and the loved one or event can be neatly printed on the book plate by the parish and then attached to the hymnal or missal or even missal cover. And it'll be there for the life of the book, and they'll be able to see it every Sunday. We also have these in English and in Spanish. And the other thing that we have, just in case you might need a little more help to purchase those missals or hymnals, we do offer financing, which includes extended terms or, in other cases, a loan. So depending on the size of the amount that is needed, we can extend the payments to a little longer term, so it gives you more time to pay for the purchase. And for a little larger payments and amounts, we can give you a 0 interest loan for 10% down and a very low setup fee. And it'll be automatically set up on a convenient, automatically monthly payment, so you don't have to worry about that. So we're hoping that those items that I just mentioned might also help in your fundraising efforts and also be able to help you make those purchases that you might need for your church and parish to enhance your worship. So again, please feel free to put some more questions in. But we're at that time where we're actually going to be answering those questions. And we have Jethro with us today, who's been looking at those questions, and he's going to be letting us know what questions that you have. Jethro?
Thanks, Gail. And I just want to say thank you so much, Koren, for being here today. Capital campaign and raising money is just something that every parish has to be focused on at some point in their history. And so it's very valuable for those viewing at home. If you have an opportunity to share this with people involved in these sorts of decisions at your parish, please do share this video with them when we post it later on today. So near and dear to my heart is one of these questions that came in, Koren, because I was involved in a capital campaign last year for a small parish in our area. And so this person wants to know, what can small parishes do to attract outside money or donations from non-parishioners, and is that a good strategy?
Well, first thing that we need to actually understand is that the main constituents for your capital project is the people that actually are part of the parish. But there are actual options to actually go beyond the parish and reach out to other people outside the parish. As I mentioned throughout this process, there are different items and different pieces that you can develop, like the brochures, like the prayer cards, the commitment cards, the Q&A, the videos. All of those items, if you take the time to invest and develop good materials, you can actually mail some of those to people that have some connection to the parish in the past, whether they moved to another community, but they grew up in that community. You always got to try to find people that have some kind of relationship to the parish, but the video and the printed materials are definitely effective tools that we are even currently using for the capital campaigns that we're doing in Orange County. That they are actually. Let me give you just a quick example. This parish is 100% Hispanic, and they wanted to make all of their communication materials in English and Spanish because they know that there's a lot of people that have some kind of connection to the parish, and they requested those English materials, even though they're not going to use it at all in the parish. They see it as important because it's another way to reach a different audience, and therefore new donors that can support the capital project that they're doing.
Great, that's a great answer. Another person wants to know if you could elaborate a little bit on who we should invite to serve on the leadership teams that you were mentioning. Maybe some examples of committees that would be involved and how to identify lead positions on those teams.
Sure. Well, my school on fundraising was a company that I worked for about 7 years, and basically what happened with the type of model that they had was basically focused on lay leadership involvement. And so at this point, at any time that I run a capital campaign or a capital project with a parish, I often come and tell the pastor, we need all members of all ministries invited to come to our session, to our meeting, so that we can do an orientation and we can explain to them the different positions. So the who is the obvious questions, the obvious choice, or the usual suspects are all members of all ministries. Not everybody's going to show up, but those are the people, because they have been evangelized, they have been in the parish for a long time, they are already involved in the parish, so you have a better shot at getting people like that to join your leadership team. In terms of committees, I mentioned that we have 14. Again, you don't have to have 14, but you need, obviously, we have general leaders that help you, are really good speaking in front of people, being the voice and the face of the project, along with fathers, so lay leaders that can do that. That's at least one. We need, obviously, somebody very, very organized, like that can be either the secretary or help you with the administrative things. It's often a person in the staff that allows you to create the list, to make invitations, the parish directory, bring some of the materials, make sure that you have all the rooms assigned for the different meetings. You have people, the catechists, or people that the youth ministers, they find ways to somehow involve the children and the youth in the process, because again, this is not a process just to raise money, but it's a process to promote stewardship in the parish. So they invite those people. There's people that are really good or have talents in social media, and with creating video, or people that are great writers. So those are the type of positions that you have. And then hospitality is very important. You want to make sure that on all the weekends that you're actually talking about the campaign, that you have a group of people welcoming everyone when they come, that you have a group of people ready to distribute all of the different pieces that you are giving out for the campaign. So again, those are just examples, and you have finally just events. If you're putting together an event or a dinner, you want people that know how to cook, people that in the parish that are good organizing events. So just these are just examples of different leadership positions, and the who is everyone that wants to participate. Sometimes we just even open it up to the community, and whoever's interested come to the orientation. We explain the positions and people sign up for those, and we have a plan. Remember, it's very specific, very important to have a plan for those people. If they're going to be in events, you got to tell them exactly what they need to do. If they're going to be in prayer, you got to tell them exactly how they're going to be helping you do that.
You touched on something in that answer that perks my interest, because I work in youth ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also have a question from one of our viewers that wants to know if you have any specific examples of how children or youth might be involved in this process.
Sure. Well, there's I don't come to parishes and tell the youth ministers or the religious education leaders to I don't come with an actual activity in mind, but I tell them there's different categories. For instance, they can involve the children in an activity that's formational about stewardship, that lesson about maybe time, talent, and treasure, and how we need to share those generously with the Lord. And also they can do an activity that puts into action stewardship. That is maybe an activity that involves time and talent, like serving during the liturgy, like maybe cleaning out the church, or cleaning the parking lot, or doing any activity where the kids or the youth are actually donating their time and talent. And also, because you're doing a capital project, there's nothing more exciting or even cuter than having kids doing a small fundraiser. We're not focusing so much on the actual amount that they're raising, but when we do the commitment weekend, the pastor often says, before we give out the commitment cards for everyone, we would like to invite the youth, or we would like to invite the children that did this X fundraiser, to contribute to this campaign, so that they can bring their contribution to the altar. That really makes a difference and inspires people, teaches people how to contribute and participate to the mission of the church.
That's such a beautiful image for the parish to see. We have another question that's wondering if you have any best practices for stewardship ministry with Hispanics. And I know you touched on this a little bit on an earlier slide with a video, but if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, currently, after 7 years of working with a national firm doing capital campaigns with many different dioceses and everything, I've decided to begin my own firm focused specifically on stewardship with Hispanics. So I invite you to look at that specific video. I think it's very complete. It's an interview on how to effectively implement stewardship with Hispanics. But I think that, if you don't get to see the video, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is, have a plan, something very similar to what we talked about today, and understand that, the Latino community doesn't have a lot of, doesn't understand stewardship, doesn't know the word stewardship, and sometimes you have the angry pastor who's complaining about maybe people not filling out a commitment card, maybe people not being so generous when giving the treasure part and everything, and you have the pastor who's more accepting or too nice and say, oh, it's okay, Hispanics, they're low income, they can't give, they have to send money back to their homes and everything. Neither one of those two attitudes are right. I think it all comes down to formation. It all comes down to teaching stewardship and inspiring Latinos to understand stewardship as a way of life, and that they can also contribute in a proportionate, sacrificial, prayerful, and planned way to the mission of the church. I'm glad I'm getting this answer, and the main reason I love what I do, helping Hispanics, further their journey in stewardship, is because, if we look at statistics, in 10, 15 years, I think it's estimated, or very soon, that Latino Catholics are going to be the majority in the Catholic Church in the United States, and I think that is very important. The key to a sustainable church, whether you're Latino Anglo, Vietnamese, or any other community, is definitely to teach stewardship and to understand that we are not owners of anything in this world, but it is God that is trusting us with everything that we have, with the divine expectation that we're going to do everything we can to contribute to the mission of the church and to fulfill God's will for our lives.
Thank you so much for your wisdom in this area this morning, Koren. We want to be good stewards of your time as well, those that are listening. And so we're right at an hour, and so we'll go ahead and close up.
Again, if you have more questions, contact OCP for more information. You're looking at the product specialist at ocp.org. That's an email, and there's a number right there to see the webinar slides and the video. There's a link as well on your screen that you can go to. I'm assuming this video and this webinar is going to be available for people to watch after we're done with this. And then stay tuned for the next webinar that is going to be responsorial psalms and gospel acclamations. We strongly recommend to stay tuned and be aware of everything that's coming up. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of ocp.org right now. And if you be so kind, please help us fill out a survey at the end of this webinar to let us know or give us some feedback about what can be improved and what you liked and what you like to see in the future. Again, thank you OCP for the space, for the opportunity. I'm blessed to be part of the OCP family, and I wish you well, and I hope this was a very productive use of your time today. Thank you, and God bless.